Okay. So thank you, Zaya. I am Sarah Kroening. I'm with Love My Air Wisconsin. It's an extension of Children's Health Alliance. And so I am honored and grateful that Bill is joining me today. So we are going to speak to enhancing indoor and outdoor air quality, monitoring solutions, and healthier spaces for schools. So the objectives, we're just going to start by sharing out the importance of air quality, health impacts of poor air quality, and then some of the ways that we are monitoring air quality and supporting this education in schools and communities. So the importance of air quality awareness and health impacts. As you know, for children, this is a really important topic, especially for children with asthma. 1 in 3 children with asthma will miss a day of school. A lot of times too, those kiddos that have some pretty significant asthma might miss multiple days in a row. They might even have to have hospital visits. And so to just become a little bit more aware, cognizant of how air quality impacts them, and then taking some proactive measures can make a huge difference in allowing and encouraging, their ability to attend. And then while they're at school, it's improving academic performance. And so just having this wide reach for something that doesn't take too much energy to really start to think about. So when we think about, especially for younger children, they're spending about 90% of their time indoors. And for kids at school, that's 1,000 hours of school over the course of a year. So this is a large amount of time that really can be impacted by just being a little bit more aware of the way that indoor air quality and outdoor air quality are affecting children. Another piece to keep in mind is the younger a child is, the more they're breathing in per minute. So when you think about this air pollution, especially as an adult, it might not seem like it's having as much of an impact, but for, our children who are, smaller, younger, this has a really big impact because they are breathing in more air per minute, and therefore having that pollution in their body is just having much more of an impact for them as well. So if you're not as familiar with air quality, on the far right part of your screen is a hair strand. And so when you look across and it goes into the smaller and smaller pieces, you'll see just how tiny this pollution is that we're referring to. So in the middle of the screen is a red blood cell. And then down a couple is the PM 2.5, where the yellow arrow is indicating. So for Love My Air specifically, we are monitoring PM 2.5, and that is smaller than a blood cell. So again, this is pollution, particulate matter that can get into the bloodstream and therefore have a really pretty serious impact on health, whether that's heart, brain development, and just generally not feeling well. And then Bill will speak to some of the other pollutants when he gets into his slides. But some of the health impacts that has is thinking about some short-term effects. Again, those kind of asthma triggers where you're not feeling well, there's a cough, chest tightness, but then that also leads to those long-term impacts, chronic asthma, the COPD, respiratory diseases, brain development, and then for, even eventually it could be cancer, stroke, heart issues as well. So this truly does have short and long-term impacts, and is really important to be paying attention to. And then the next piece to just consider is the way to monitor air quality is can be very low cost tools, and they report out information based on the AQI. So Air Quality Index, EPA created it. And it's a really easy visual to understand air quality, where it kind of follows your basic understanding of colors. Green is good. Anything beyond is becoming something to start paying attention to, meaning that there's more risk. So moderate, there's more pollution in the air, and then it continues to increase based on the readings of the tool. So I'm going to pass it to Bill, and he's going to share a little bit more about pollutants that he monitors, and then the indoor air quality piece to all of this.
Well, thank you very much, Sarah, and thank you everybody for joining us today. I want to start off by talking about the 5 major air pollutants which we are concerned with, and these are let me go back. There we go. These air pollutants are designated by the EPA as major air pollutants. We start with ground level ozone, particulate matter, including PM 2.5 and PM 10, and also carbon monoxide and nitrogen and sulfur dioxide. And this helps set the stage for us on designing both outdoor air quality and indoor air quality monitoring. Next slide, please, Sarah. Now, these 5 major air pollutants are monitored by the EPA, and this is an example of the monitoring station set up by the EPA in southeastern Wisconsin. And it's an example of an ozone and PM 2.5 and PM 10 map. And this is an example of something that teachers and students could look at to see what's going on in their particular area. The thing is that for us, we have 2 monitoring stations in all of Milwaukee County. So we have to extrapolate that across the entire southeastern region. So we have a number of sensors out there right now, and I'm so glad Sarah is doing what she's doing. We have 10 sensors on outside of schools right now, and I am putting sensors in each one of those schools to do side-by-side monitoring. Next slide, please. The primary air pollutants we're looking at inside schools include the volatile organic compounds, or VOCs, and the particulate matter, with our focus also on PM 2.5. We're also looking at nitrogen and sulfur dioxide, carbon monoxide, ozone, and formaldehyde. And we have the ability to monitor these pollutants using direct reading devices. Next slide, please. The secondary indoor air pollutants that may affect air quality is a compilation of potential pollutant sources. And we have to remember that they can come from outside the school, can be brought in through your fresh air intakes, coming through your doors, can be tracked in through traffic in and out of the school. And they can also reside inside the school. And we have to also think about asbestos, lead-based paint, radon, mold, and other biological contamination. See, some of these sources can be controlled through a very robust visual monitoring program. That's what we do with asbestos and lead-based paint. And they can be repaired immediately with trained technicians. And that's part of a visual monitoring program. Also, water leaks and infiltration are addressed immediately to arrest mold growth. Because if you have a water leak which is persistent and continues for days and days and days, that's when mold can start to grow. So if we can arrest it right away and address it, we can keep mold from growing. And also, just within our district, we have tested each school building for radon, and any exceedances, and we didn't have a lot of exceedances, they were addressed with engineered mitigation methods. Okay, next slide, please. Some of the common indicators to monitor in an indoor air quality program, and this is what I start with when I go into a school, is carbon dioxide. Carbon dioxide is what we exhale. It's part of our breathing process. And it's also monitored to determine if fresh air ventilation is being provided to a classroom sufficiently to provide adequate occupant comfort. Because I think we've all been in a room where it starts to get stuffy and warm when, say, a conference room is really packed with people. And that could be because we don't have enough fresh air coming in. That's the same thing in a classroom or a library or a media center or a general, the front office. We also look at temperature and relative humidity. And those are all indicators of occupant comfort. Okay, next slide, please. Now, we are really focused on poor indoor air quality. because that can trigger a whole host of health problems, as Sarah indicated. And that's including asthma and allergies. That increases absenteeism and reduces academic performance. And research links key environmental factors to health outcomes and students' ability to perform. Improvements in school environmental quality can enhance academic performance as well as teacher and staff productivity and retention. And we've given you some links here below to kind of back that statement up. And this is from the EPA. All right, thank you. And one of our key goals in our indoor air quality program is to maintain that air quality. And we say good air quality. When I tell my people, well, we're striving for excellent air quality. And keep in mind, within our school district, we have buildings built in the 1880s up to, well, we've got additions on buildings which were commissioned just this past year. So we've got a whole host of different types of building environments and conditions. But when we're conducting an IAQ assessment, we look for all those temperature, pressure, relative humidity, carbon dioxide. That helps us determine performance of the HVAC systems. But we also look at carbon monoxide when we know we've got combustion equipment nearby, saying gas-fired kitchen ovens. We want to make sure that the fans servicing those ovens are exhausting properly. We also look at nitrogen dioxide and sulfur dioxide because we're concerned with the auto and truck exhaust. That dovetails very nicely with what Sarah's doing with her anti-idling program. And we're concerned, is that exhaust getting into the school somehow? And also we're looking at stationary source emissions from industrial and manufacturing, because we've got sections of the city which are industrial, and they're adjacent to some schools, some neighborhood schools. And there's some concerns that pollutants can infiltrate into this school building envelope. Next slide, please. And we're also monitoring for particulate matter with a focus on PM 2.5. We also have the ability with some of our sensing instrumentation to go even farther down that chain that Sarah showed you, to some very small diameter, micron diameter particulates, down to what we call the nanoparticle range. And some of the reason for that is particulates just don't stop in size at PM 2.5. But that's the key indicator size that we kind of focus on. Examples of where PM 2.5 particulate comes from: burning of fuels in vehicles. It's just not gas fumes in those emissions. You get particulate, very small particulate. It also comes out of power plants, coal-fired and gas-fired, industrial processes, residential wood burning, agricultural burning, natural sources such as dust storms, brush fires, forest fires, and seasonal leaf and brush burning. And here I want to give you an example of, Sarah and I had the opportunity to talk with the director of environmental programs at Los Angeles Unified District a few months back. And they've got a very robust outdoor air monitoring program because they've got forest fires surrounding them. So last week, when the Pacific Palisades fire and Altadena fires were burning furiously, I checked the website, and it's publicly available. You can go to the Los Angeles Unified School District website to search air quality, and their site pops up, shows you all of their monitors in Los Angeles. Last week, it was orange and red. If you remember that scale that Sarah showed you, it wasn't very healthy. And thank goodness, I checked today, it's green with a scattering of yellow. So the fires aren't affecting the schools as much as it was last week. Also, moving on, some of the other sources of particulate comes from seasonal pollen, and then consumer products such as talc and powders. And then also, I want to emphasize that educational activities can cause particulate pollution inside schools. 3D printers, they're a great educational tool. I can't emphasize that enough. They're terrific. However, if you have them, they should be in a filtered and vented enclosure because they give off very, very small particulate emissions. That's where the nanoparticle size comes in. And that also, art classes, wood and metal shops can also be a source of pollution. Okay, next slide, please. We're also looking for the volatile organic compounds because we know that VOCs can cause a potential adverse impact on childhood asthma. And there are various sources brought into school buildings. They can be unauthorized cleaning products, disinfectants, air freshener sprays. And hopefully your district, your schools have got an authorized list of cleaning products and disinfectants that can be used. And please steer clear from bringing in air freshener sprays and be cognizant that middle school, high school students like to use colognes and perfumes and body sprays. We've seen that we will put a sensor in a room, like a high school room. I can see on my graph VOC spike during that classroom time. When the students leave the classroom, the VOC concentration, I can see it go back down to 0. Some people are arguing with me on that, but I've seen it time and time again. And when you see it in person too, it just kind of reaffirms that is happening. But it's not happening in the lower grades for the kids who are much more, I think, apt to be more affected by high VOC concentrations. And also, again, we've got industrial sources near buildings, which may impact IAQ with their pollution and their emissions. So we are concerned about that. And I give you some sources that can cause VOC emissions. Okay, next slide, please. This is an example of one of the sensors that we use. This is a TSIQ track IAQ monitor. It's handheld. It has probes which can be interchangeable. I can test for ventilation using a hot wire anemometer probe. And that's helpful to help me figure out, is the ventilation appropriate? Is it sufficient in that particular room? And then I can also use another probe for temperature, relative humidity, barometric pressure, carbon monoxide, carbon dioxide, etc. And I also have had opportunity to use this as a teaching tool, especially in very inquisitive, like 3rd and 4th graders. When I come into their room holding one of these, they ask me if I'm a Ghostbuster. And that's a fun conversation to have. But I can also show them right then and there what I am monitoring. And then I can have them breathe on the end of the probe and they can see the carbon dioxide level go up and down. And then I can see the light bulbs going off. It says, oh, I get it now. Next slide, please. This is another sensor that we are using. This is the TSI Air Assure monitor. It looks like a smoke detector. It's very unobtrusive. It uses, you know what, 110 AC power cord, and I can plug it in, slap it up on a wall with some Velcro, and walk away. Because it monitors the air 24/7, and I can program it to monitor a number of different pollutants depending on the device that I have. And I call it a diagnostic tool because it can provide long-term data logging, and I can look at it and see, like, for example, what's happening in those high school rooms with the VOCs, or look at the ventilation systems over time and what's happening with fans delivering fresh air, looking at the CO2 concentrations over time, and we can really pinpoint what's happening, say in a wing or in the HVAC zone or in a specific room itself. Next slide, please. And this is an example of what that Air Assure instrument can do. And you know, the Q-Track sensors, the handheld sensors, are great for doing spot checks. And I can zero in on very specific things, but they just give me readings at a given point in time. The Air Assures, again, are long-term. And I can look at seasonality. I can look at classroom trends to see what's really going on. This particular example here was in a newer, like less than 4 years old classroom addition. It's a 3-story wing. And one section of the wing was getting too hot, was getting too cold. We just couldn't get what we call that Goldilocks region where it was just right. And so I put sensors on each floor. And this is carbon dioxide concentration. And that blue line that you see at 1,000, that's 1,000 parts per million. That's our target concentration of where we don't really want to go above it. And the blue concentration designator there is the room where we were having problems, room 207. And the other ones, we weren't having any problems. And they touched up to the 1,000 parts per million line, but then they filtered off. But 207 is consistently above. So we worked with our HVAC specialists, our building controls people, and they found out that the fan unit and the variable air volume settings weren't cooperating. So we had to get those reprogrammed, recalibrated, and after that happened, everything was fine. So it's a great diagnostic tool. Okay, next slide, please. Now, the benefits of a regular air quality monitoring program, especially for us, it determines the effectiveness of our overall IAQ program compliance. And I urge all of you, if you've got an IAQ program, think about doing some regular air quality monitoring program. If you don't have a program, look at the EPA's Tools for Schools program for indoor air quality. And then start looking at it, start getting it kicked off, and working with your administration and your facilities and maintenance people to really dive in to have a proactive IAQ program. We can look at HVAC system operation, as I just mentioned, and also determine the need for testing and balancing of the system. That's terribly important for us. And under the recently completed ESSER projects, testing and balancing of our systems was done. And right now, I just talked to our electric shop yesterday. They are looking at all of those reports just to verify the validity of it. We're doing our internal quality control on that. It also detects upsets in the overall interior building envelope on whether or not you've got unauthorized chemical use. Somebody came in, say over the weekend, and did some painting, unauthorized painting, using, high solvent content paint, and that can happen. We also are looking to achieve compliance with our goals that are connected to the building population and the activities happening there. And part of this benefit also is like working with groups like Sarah's group, which she has been instrumental on developing a webinar on indoor air quality and our portable HEPA filtration air cleaners for educators. And we are getting very close to being able to kick that off through our professional development division to our educators. And through all of this, you can include student engagement at any portion of this, because the EPA Tools for Schools program is really designed for doing care in each one of your classrooms, like looking at what's impacting your air quality. Like, do you have covers over your door, makeup air grills? Do you have things stacked up on areas where they shouldn't be stacked up and blocking fan movement, which can short circuit your ventilation? And having student champions look at that and help you with that can be great. And then they can take that home with them. All right, next slide, please. And I want to end my portion of this with a case study, one of our success stories. And this started with a complaint received by a grade school that had air quality issues in a second floor classroom that was hot, stuffy, and generally, and I should say, uncomfortable. And I used a TSI Q-Track handheld monitor, and it indicated elevated temperature and carbon dioxide in the room. And we had about 32 students in there, and it was a sufficient size for that amount of students. But I saw that this was what I was seeing. There was insufficient air volume servicing the classroom. And I used the anemometer probe on my device to check the airflow coming out of the perimeter unit ventilators, and found that they were not operating at peak efficiency. So I put in an emergency work order to our maintenance and repair division, and they came out the next day. They pulled those unit ventilators apart, they cleaned them, put them back together, got the fans running, and that made a marked improvement in the air quality in the room. The teacher and the students were happy and back to having a safe and healthy learning environment. And I also put in a follow-up work order to issue to request a complete testing and balancing, what we call a tab, of the HVAC system or zone servicing that classroom and the entire second floor. So next slide, please. So this success story, the teacher had a concern. It triggered an IAQ investigation. So we have a process in place for that. And the findings were that I put in the emergency work orders. We got it evaluated right away, but then we also had the whole system tested and balanced by certified technicians. And that's a picture of a technician monitoring a supply diffuser, making sure that we have sufficient airflow. And this ensures heating and cooling in the classrooms that meet design specifications for the comfort of staff and students. And I recommend that if you have an issue, start by contacting your building engineer or your principal. Ask if you have an IEQ concern form. And then this can mobilize district action. And I think that's it for me. It's back to you, Sarah.
Thank you, Bill. And so something I want to highlight that I also know that Victoria mentioned at the beginning of our presentation is, and Bill has spoke to this throughout his presentation, this is really important work and data, but I know school districts often want to be part of this data collection. And so I think it's also really important as your class or in an extracurricular activity program is interested in doing some work around air quality, especially if it's indoor, involve your principal. They also might have tools that they're willing to loan to your class and support that work. So I think that that's a great partnership to develop as you might be interested in pursuing some of this information. And just to give a little bit more information about what we do with Love My Air Wisconsin, we are specifically outdoor air quality. And so we're looking at the items that Bill has also mentioned, the vehicle emissions, construction, industry, forest fires, residential burning. And we promote and provide education and awareness around how this outdoor air quality can impact children, even as they are entering the school, or as Bill has also talked about, the way that connects to indoor air quality, because the outside air is oftentimes coming inside. So we really encourage schools to install, we provide these signs that can be installed at schools, and we encourage the schools to then make note of it, bring attention to this, that if, as vehicles are idling, buses, cars, that they turn off their engines. It's a benefit not only to their vehicle, but the air around the school. So that's just one element that we offer. We are a program that is replicating a program out of Denver. So we are very grateful that they are sharing many resources with us. They started a dashboard, and we look at this as, because we're focused on the PM 2.5, this is really like an introduction to air quality, because air quality is so complex. There are so many pollutants and sources that go into each of those pollutants. So starting off with the PM 2.5, which is one of the more serious ones, it is a common one. It's a great way to just start building up this education and awareness. So that is what we have on our Love My Air website. Those are the sensors we've installed. And then so with the monitoring, we also pair this with the education. And so that's where I have worked with Bill, and he's been such a wonderful champion for us and really analyzing that indoor outdoor comparison, and really supporting our work as well across the district. And so for schools that are interested in doing a little bit more hyper local information, I mean, that's like as they're walking. Bill mentioned too the handheld air sensors. We loan out air beams. They are the personal air monitor. They're paired with a real-time graph that students can look at as they're walking with this air beam. And then it also records this data so they can come back to it later on as well. So this is an example. Riley Montessori School is using air beams, and they had a walking field trip. So they brought these air beams as they were walking outside. And as you can see, that purple arrow is pointing to a short area where they did experience air quality that elevated into the yellow zone. So then it's interesting for students to note, why might that have occurred there? So while they're walking, they're taking notes. Are there idling vehicles? That's right by a parking lot. This is also right by highways. Was there a lot of traffic, or there's a traffic light there? So taking note to what's around them, what's impacting air quality, also just, that draws that attention that it, a lot of times you don't see that there's poor air quality, but it's there. So it's a really interesting learning opportunity for students to engage with. A couple other items that we provide, like I mentioned, lesson plans. NASA, and we're part of the Health and Air Quality Applied Sciences team. They have been really amazing and added some features to our dashboard. It's a satellite layer and it provides imaging of aerosol optical depth. Again, we look at this all as very introductory level opportunities. And so it's really just a way to start building up student knowledge. If you were to go to their tools, they have many other layers that you can add to filter and analyze air. But this is a layer that's looking just at the aerosol optical depth. And that's where it's a light to see how easily light is passing through the atmosphere. And so as pollution starts to increase, light is not passing through as easily, and therefore it's impacting the satellite observation. So the darker the blue, the clearer the air. And as you can see on that legend across the bottom, as you get into those deeper colors, it's showing that there's more pollution in the air. One thing to note here, this doesn't exactly correlate with AQI. You can see the green's kind of in the middle, where that's actually opposite, because blue is where it's the cleanest. So, some learning opportunities there. But it's really interesting to see where there's the sources of air pollution. So, again, as we've talked about throughout this presentation, is it something local and hyper local, like cars idling, or is it something from further away, such as a wildfire? And so this was even an interesting snapshot where the cloud coverage does impact how much the satellite's able to observe, but you can see from top to bottom, the top part is a little bit more, it looks like the air is a little bit cleaner, and the lower part looks like there's more pollution in the air. And if you look across to where our satellites are, or sorry, not our satellites, our sensors, the green is kind of in the top and the yellow is towards the bottom. So, what is happening in our atmosphere that's impacting our air quality? So just some really awesome educational tools that we offer. And I want to make that connection to the En-ROADS model here, where air pollution is also coming from, coal plants, power plants, wood burning. And so really looking at, if we look at, renewable energy and items like that, how does that not only have an impact in greenhouse gas emissions, but that connection to air pollution? So another really great connection to tools that exist. And one quick case, or a couple quick case studies and success stories I'd like to share out really quick is that we also have an app that I attend events. I encourage families to download this app that shows them these outdoor air sensors, and then they can actually favorite their child's school or a school that's close to where they're living and get automatic notifications when air quality does go beyond a certain level, and it's what they pick. So if they want to get notified anytime the air levels beyond yellow, they'll get a notification. And so that's been really exciting to see families using it. They've been excited, especially for families who have children with asthma. This is, something that we hear about when there are those major events like a wildfire, but it's not actually, we don't necessarily think about it on a day-to-day basis. And especially over winter, it seems like a time when the air should be cleaner, but that's actually a time when PM 2.5 tends to linger in our air. Something to do with the cold atmosphere actually kind of captures that in. So this is an important topic to consider on a day-to-day basis. And that's something, as mentioned in this slide, that Hepatha Lutheran Church was a partner of ours over the summer. Their work ministry, they had students lead this work. They had families who self-report out as having, some asthma concerns, and then they all work together to talk about how this impacts them, looking at air quality in their neighborhood, that hyper-local sources and things like that. And so there was a lot of great feedback from those families to say that this really did have an impact for them, and they are changing the way they view air quality and just knowing to check it. We offer a school walkthrough program as part of our Wisconsin Asthma Coalition. So teachers can ask us to come in and do a quick walkthrough, and it can either just be a single classroom. They can send us pictures of their classroom. This is meant to be a support, not any sort of evaluation. And so it's just really to encourage them to take note of what's going on in their classrooms. And as Bill mentioned as well, the EPA website also has some really amazing checklists that can be included if there's some interest in student groups wanting to take initiative in this. And then we are also in the process of finalizing that webinar that we're going to offer. It's specific to MPS right now because of the air cleaners that they're supplying, but it's something that we plan to offer and adapt to other school districts based on air cleaners that they maybe provide. those are really, really helpful. They do work, they clean the air. So as long as they are being used properly, they can make a big difference. And so now we have some time for questions, but this is our information. If you have any follow-up items beyond this webinar, we're happy to connect with you.